Welcome back, South Carolina. I'm your host, Brandon Peak, and this is podcast 1854. Today, we have Greg Ford back in the studio. Greg, thanks for joining us again, buddy.
Thank you for having us back.
Yes, sir. So it's been a minute the last time that we had you in the studio, and what's been going on?
Brandon, we've had a learning experience from something I've never imagined since we spoke last time. I believe we was in here in mid-March, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
Or beginning of April, somewhere right around in there. The campaign has flourished.
Mm-hmm.
It started to grow some legs and get quite a bit of traction. We've learned quite a bit about the legislation within the state of South Carolina. A little bit more down into the weeds. We've had a few rallies. We had a freedom rally down in Columbia. We had with the Freedom Caucus,
Mm-hmm.
or what soon turned into the Freedom Caucus. We were invited down to the Freedom Caucus dinner, the inaugural dinner for that, the day that they announced that they had the Freedom Caucus formed within the House of Legislation or the representatives in Columbia. So we went down for that dinner. Following that, the next big event, we had a rally in Somerville with
Mm-hmm.
the governor.
Okay.
Been able to meet quite a few people. People that I never thought I would ever meet in a million years. About 3 weeks ago, I was invited down to Mar-a-Lago.
Awesome.
Went down there, met folks such as Mike Lindell, Doug Franks, Dr. Doug Frank, that did a lot of the research on the election integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Met some folks for Women for Liberty.
Okay.
Women for America First, I believe is their name. Met those folks. General Flynn.
Oh man, you got to meet General Flynn. That's
Mark
phenomenal.
Fincham. We had dinner with Mark Fincham
Yeah.
while we were down there, and then they subsequently come up to Charleston, and we had dinner with them again
That's awesome.
here in Charleston. So had quite a bit of time that we've actually been able to sit down
Yeah.
and speak with these individuals on a personal level.
That's right.
Versus what you see on TV or read in the newspaper. So I had a very fortunate opportunity presented to me on several occasions, and it wasn't anything that I personally did. It was someone else outside of our campaign that saw something in me
Oh wow.
that invited me to those functions.
See, that's awesome.
So I believe we're gaining quite a bit of traction. It's very humbling
Yeah.
to know that I'm out there fighting for something, and people believe in me to the point where they're inviting me to some of these major events. Outside of those events, we've had several conversations with huge number of activist groups or groups looking for change in certain areas, all the way up to the solicitors within the state of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Sheriff's Association. I've talked to several sheriffs on several different topics. Trying to think of some other areas that we've looked at. County folks, we've talked to them for the county structures or building, things along those lines. Election integrity, we've talked to, obviously Dr. Franks and looked at the different aspects. And then there's another young lady that's here in the state of South Carolina that studied our election, so we talked to her a little bit
Okay.
to try to get down to the basics of what we're looking at, not necessarily legislation,
Yeah.
but knowing what is going wrong, to where when I end up in Columbia, we form legislation that closes those loopholes.
And that's what we need, Greg.
So that's what
That's what we need.
we're doing at this point, and we've got all the way down into the weeds, so far into the root of these problems that it's amazing the amount of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we're not even necessarily privy to at this point. And then it's eye-opening with the legislation. Looking at the titles, there's several of them I'm like, heck yeah, let's, that's it. That's our bill. We need to support that. And then you start reading down through the fine print. You're like, whoa, where did this come from? So that's what we're getting right now. But I believe we have a pretty decent team and backing. We have some different things that's happened. One of our largest endorsements we've had lately was Veterans for America First. So they're a vetting process for larger endorsements.
Mhm.
So they endorsed us unanimously through their whole board.
Congratulations on that.
So that's veterans.
Yeah.
Veterans for America First. So you can go down on their website and take a look. And some of the bigger names, Katie Arrington's on there. Russell Fry from the state of South Carolina, if you know about him.
I know
over here.
Russell. Yeah.
So there's some bigger names on there.
I vetted him whenever I was with the executive vice president, with the Fed when I was doing, so when he got that endorsement.
Yep.
Yes, sir. So no, Russell.
So there's some pretty good names on there, looking at it, and I'm, like I said, humbled to have my name and picture right next to theirs.
That's awesome. You deserve it, man. You deserve it. You've been putting in the work, and I know we met last year, but what I've seen you do and what I've heard of the things that you've done, like I can tell that this is something. This isn't a hobby for you. Like,
No,
this is for real. This is life. Like this is you. This is you wanting to make a difference. And I think a lot of other people see that as well. That's why, like you said, when you get those calls outside of your area to say, hey, come, you're invited to Mar-a-Lago, or we want to endorse you, so that's pretty special. So when you start turning heads like that, they see that you're in it to win it, and you are what South Carolina needs, and District 98 for sure. And so I wish you guys the best. And I mean, from what I've seen, you're literally the best choice, because your opponent's Chris Murphy, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you don't mind, man, let's dive right into that, because there's some things that I've seen, and everyone can go and you guys can research this yourself. But Chris Murphy, so let's go into criminal justice reform. All right, you want to talk about that?
Sure.
All right, so let's go into that. Chris Murphy, he is sponsoring a bill, and it's in the House, so it's H3623, which it's an early release of criminals, basically, and so with that, and considering all of the crime rates, everything's spiked right now, Greg. From theft, petty theft, carjacking, shootings, the whole 9 yards. So around the board, we have a spike in crime, even violent crime, So how do you feel about that H3623, the early release of inmates?
So with my Republican beliefs, I believe solely in law and order.
Mm-hmm.
Life is 100% about choices. Either you suffer the consequences for your choices, or you benefit from your choices. So we have something like this bill right here, this sponsored by a legislator, a defense lawyer, criminal defense lawyer to be exact.
And that would be Chris. Yep.
Through his subcommittee of judicial sentencing committee, I believe is what the title is. They've come out with the fact of they want to release criminals from jail if they're non-violent criminals. If you start reading down through that bill, there's some different things in there, like they want to eliminate the sentencing for drug offenders. So drug traffickers, drug manufacturers, drug dealers, things along those lines. And they
want to limit the sentencing on that.
They want to eliminate the sentencing.
Oh, wow. So
let the judge make the decision.
And speaking of that, here's something, and I just brought this up because we had Zoe Warren and Harrison Musselwhite, who is running for governor and lieutenant governor. Musselwhite for governor, Warren for lieutenant governor. Now, I just asked them because we got them to come to Fairfield and speak to the crowd up there, and I asked if they would sign into law, or at least, push the buttons to get it done to where, because, right now, trafficking fentanyl, it's not illegal in South Carolina. So what are your thoughts? And based on what you just said, that's what I'm saying. So to eliminate these drug charges or whatever, as far as the time, like when you see something like fentanyl that is coming over here and is killing tens of thousands of people, literally thousands of people a day.
Yep.
It doesn't take, it takes, from what the studies shown, like something the size of a pencil eraser, and that's enough to kill a full-grown human being. Just, so how do you feel about getting something like that started to where, if you're trafficking fentanyl, you're going to pay the price, you're going to pay the penalty for that?
So either we have one of two things. I was thinking about this on the way up here. Either we have a war on drugs or we don't have a war on drugs.
Mm-hmm. I say we have a war on drugs.
with this bill that we were just talking about, 3623, they want to change the code 4453-375. It's related to unlawful possession, manufacture, trafficking of methamphetamines, cocaine-based, and other controlled substances, so that revise the penalties, weight presumption, and eliminate minimum mandatory sentencing. So they're already looking at cocaine, which is something that we had a problem with, and then methamphetamine.
For sure.
So they're talking about,
we still have a problem with.
They're talking about eliminating the sentencing to put a drug on our street, potentially, because now we don't have any accountability for people trafficking, manufacturing, whatever.
And they can go wild with it.
Yeah. So there's not a number that I can see on this part of the bill. I have the summary pulled up. But if we start looking at that, fentanyl is something that's high on our radar right now.
Mm-hmm.
What about methamphetamines? Methamphetamines is, battery acid. And,
lithium and
all types of stuff, and that's what kids are smoking, and it's polluting the minds, and it's destroying people's
starter fluid. There's so much
nasty stuff.
It is. I've seen like bust, where they would show the active ingredients, and that's typically how you can find them. Like, because when they pour the stuff out, it kills everything. Trees, grass, like you can definitely tell, and to see. Like you said, battery acid, lithium, they'll literally buy batteries, peel them apart to take the lithium out on the inside, and Coleman lighter fluid and all, and it's just like, wow. And they want to eliminate that.
And we want to eliminate the consequences for you to be caught with it, manufacturing or selling it.
And so,
so how does that go into, you asked about fentanyl particularly.
Yeah.
Fentanyl is something that's high on our radar right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to allow, if something like this, thankfully, this legislation died in the House.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
It is going nowhere.
And that's the 3623, right?
3623 did not get approved through the House. So
and Chris Murphy, and I'm going to say this on record, but Mr. Murphy, like, you should be ashamed of yourself for trying to eliminate stuff like this when it kills tens of thousands of people. Around the world daily, tens of thousands of people daily die from this stuff, and here you are wanting to eliminate it, the punishment. So someone like that, Mr. Murphy, in my opinion, I don't see where you're fit to even be in office, but that's my personal and professional opinion. So I had to get that out there. So you guys know how I am, and that's ludicrous.
So they want to go, the basis of this bill is off of the criminal incarceration rate. So when they started this in 2000 and talking to solicitors, I believe it was like 2012, 2013, 14, somewhere right around in there, we had 25,000 individuals incarcerated in the state of South Carolina from the numbers that they gave me. I don't have it all written down here. I've got a little phone. I don't have the notes with me, but there's roughly those numbers.
Yeah.
And they started looking at the cost per inmate in the state of South Carolina, and we had a deficit in our budget to incarcerate all these people. So they started going to the reduction. So this bill is to reduce from mandatory sentence from 85% of mandatory sentence. So You get 10 years for trafficking cocaine, you're going to do 8.5 years minimum, down to 65%. So we've already reduced it to 6.5 years for trafficking cocaine through the state of South Carolina. So how does that work? How does that affect? It has a ripple effect through our law enforcement. So how is our law enforcement going to budget, keeping up with the criminals that's trafficking this stuff through our streets? Now we have petty crime. You already mentioned with petty crime.
I did, yep.
We're going to start having statistics show, once they start getting on these, underlying drugs, we start having petty crime spikes. Dorchester County, we had a deputy sheriff come and speak with us, and since COVID, he was looking more along the lines of domestic violence. We have a massive spike of domestic violence within Dorchester County against women. These guys are beating up our women, and that's not kosher.
No, not at all.
And a lot of them, when we talked to them, mentioned that there was some drugs or alcohol involved. So now we're going to make it during the incident.
Yeah.
Now we're going to make it non-penalties if you have a certain amount.
That's right.
But then their statistics also show that if you go from non-violent and you don't have accountability, that it progresses into a violent crime, such as beating up on your women.
Exactly. It's a ripple effect.
It's
just
a ripple
like you
effect.
said. So we're going to sit here, and let's just say, me as a criminal, I know that I can keep this amount of drugs, and I'm not going to get charged for it, so I'm going to get high out of my mind. And if my wife or significant other, girlfriend, female partner, whatever, they don't like it, then I'm just going to beat up on them because I'm tired of hearing about it. And then guess what? I'm fine, because nothing's going to happen, because you have people like Chris Murphy who wants to do away with all this stuff. In South Carolina, you need to be aware of this. June 14th is the primary. So a lot of people don't even vote in the primary, and that's where we fall behind, because you have great men like Greg Ford here who has served he has continued to serve throughout his whole life, and hardworking entrepreneur, and he cares about, the American way of life, and that is freedom, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And here you go, you have people like Chris Murphy, who is in office, and he's sponsoring bills to say, hey, take your drugs, it doesn't matter, let's just bam, whatever. We can't even get legalized marijuana or legal cannabis, whether it's medical, legal, we can't even get that passed, which comes from the ground, mind you. God, everything started with a seed, an orange, an apple, a peach. It all started from a seed.
Everything.
Cannabis started from a seed. Same thing. So let's not, let's keep something, or let's do away with something that God, left here for us. And those of y'all that don't believe, then maybe this ain't the right place for you to be. But we believe here. So, but if you have methamphetamines and all these other cocaine and all these other heavy, powerful drugs, it's okay. I'm going to slap your wrist and say, hey, don't do that again. We're going to take your drugs. Go on back home.
There's another bill that's out there, and this kind of scared me quite a bit. It was talking about reducing the possession weights of illicit drugs.
Okay.
And one of the things they added in once we started reading the regulation was LSD was in there, methamphetamines was in there. Several different drugs that were underlying, just like,
and now
we're just going to make this open, just let's go for it, free will, like Oregon did. Oregon and Washington did it.
Oh,
they're struggling right now.
Yeah.
We're trending towards that in the state of South Carolina with legislation such as this.
And just to clarify, when you say the weight, so therefore, let's just say an ounce of marijuana, right? Cannabis, I call it cannabis, but an ounce of cannabis, they would consider that, instead of me having that on a person, my personal use, whatever, they would sit there and say, okay, well, that is distribution, because you have an ounce of cannabis, even though I'm not distributing it. It's just my personal. So is that what you're saying when you say they're trying to change the weights of it? So if you get caught, let's just say with 5 grams of methamphetamines, they're going to lower that to say, hey, well, you can have 10 grams. It's okay. You know.
So it sounded like they're going to make it to where it's a fine if it's up to, say, the 5 grams. I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers, but
Yeah, but
it would be a fine versus a drug charge. So we're starting with the lower level things such as drugs, and we're going to a fine versus a criminal penalty. But that to me erodes the law and order. You know, if we have a law in the book, either you broke it or you didn't break it.
Exactly. That's what they're there for.
That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So if you go use your drugs and you start stealing my stuff and we don't charge you with the drug use or the theft, now you infringed on my liberties, peace, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because you took my stuff because of you.
Yep.
So now
that's when your petty crime.
The petty crime stuff comes, and we have a little bit of a flip flop. We're in a backwards world right now, and
Very much so.
I seriously
Very
think,
much so.
and I hate to say this, but I literally think I'm in a Republican primary against what on the surface, the more I learn, is either a center libertarian or a Democrat.
Well,
I mean, this right here is Democrat.
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds like a Democratic move. I'm gonna be honest with you, it does.
Some of the things is happening. I'm just like, what's going on here? But you know, Chris is signed up as a Republican, and we're going to push forward. I'm 100% Republican.
I know that. I can honestly say that. Yes. And
there is no wavering.
Exactly.
You know where I come from, conservative Republican, and maybe he's a center-leaning individual. Which there's some topics that I'm slightly center on. You start talking about S-150 cannabis. I'm a little bit more libertarian-ish. You do your thing and I'll do mine, and we'll move along.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Because there's
way.
parts of it that I agree with, but then there's other parts that I don't.
I do, exactly. I don't agree with the 16 permits. I think it should be more. Because I feel like those 16 permits probably already had a name attached to them. They just wasn't on paper yet, but the people knew who those 16 permits was going to go to. So that's how I feel about that. I feel like, in my opinion, that if you have the land and you have the means to make it work, do it. Do it. Follow the guidelines, follow the procedures, but don't limit it. And now, I'm not saying that everyone should be allowed to go grow it, but that's when we get into recreational. So let's say 5 plants under 10 foot, so okay, if I want to do it recreational, I get a permit, so they know that, hey, I'm growing recreational. I'm growing 5 plants. And this hypothetical, guys, limit me to 5 plants under 10 foot tall, 10 foot or under. I can maintain that. Great.
10 foot tall cannabis plants a beast.
Ooh, yes, sir, they are. Yes, sir, they are.
So with that, we learned about S-150, which is the
Compassionate
Care Act for medicinal marijuana. That bill died in the House once it come over, because you can't induce taxes on something from the Senate. It has to come from the House. So it died off of a technicality. The one part of that bill that we have a little bit of an issue with is, I sat down with Hugh Weathers the other night. He come to one of our meetings, and it was very few of us, so I sat and had a conversation with him. And I have a little bit of an issue with the way that they're going to align that bill. Hugh Weathers' office, Department of Agriculture, already manages the hemp program in the state of South Carolina.
Okay.
So they already have a whole team that understands all the way up to SLED, the Delta 9 THC, the testing, the whatever. Well, that bill, when it says turned over to the department, talking to Mr. Weathers, they're going to turn that over to, I think he said DHEC in the state of South Carolina. So now they're going to go all the way from the ground, seed, to the shelf. I have a little bit of a problem with that, because now we're expanding our government control through DHEC on an agricultural
DHEC needs to just disappear.
product. So maybe we need to look at that bill, and when I get voted in, hopefully we're successful on June 14th. I have faith we're going to be successful. When we start our legislation session in January, that is one part of the bill that I will look at heavily. Is DHEC does not grow plants. Department of Ag grows plants.
There you go.
We do not grow government to cover a commodity such as cannabis. Now, if they want to talk about the DHEC controlling the once it's harvest and going to the shelf, that's something I can deal with. Not when it's growing, because now we'll have, you know, people from DHEC coming out to our farms telling us how to farm stuff, and then I'll have Department of Ag, South Carolina Department of Ag, coming out telling us how to grow stuff as well, and we're going to have conflict.
Yep.
And we don't need all these people involved in this. It's a very
DHEC
simple.
needs to get out of a lot. I'm gonna be honest. DHEC needs to either be shut down. Certain portions of it need to be shut down, and they need to have their hand, because I'm sorry, but they, in my opinion, they're overpaid, and they don't even do what they're supposed to be doing, and they want to get involved in everything else.
Yep.
But yet you can't get this right.
They're getting too powerful.
Way too powerful. Something that needs to
So-
be broke up. And me and
Yep.
Musselwhite, we talked about that.
Yep.
And once he's in office, once he gets voted in, because I'm telling you, and it's nothing against Henry, you know, again, I like Henry as a person, but as a governor, he let South Carolina down more than one time. And you know, that's just how I feel about it. And like, once you tell me you're gonna fight to the gates of hell, but then you reneged on that, come on now. And his net worth has doubled.
So I'm not 100% sure it's the blame lays solely at the feet of McMaster. The way our legislation is set up, or our government in the state of South Carolina, we have the governor out here, and then we have some departments up under him, then we have the legislator. I fully believe our legislators have failed us. Our senators and legislators,
For sure.
and representatives,
Yeah.
have failed us 100%.
I just think that McMaster could take more of a I'm getting in your face approach. You know what I mean? Like,
Possibly,
okay,
yeah.
I'm drawing the line here. I've asked you guys to do what you're supposed to be doing, and yet nothing is getting done. So I'm going to say, hey, by this date and time, if it's not done, I'm going to be on the phone. I'm getting involved. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I just think that there are some things, or maybe just don't make accusations like that. Maybe don't say I'm going to fight to the gates of hell to prevent this, and then you turn around and you don't do that, and then you allow it. So maybe it's just choosing your words.
Government structure
There
is
you
where
go.
we need to look at it. We all need to get a solid education on South Carolina government structure. That's something that I have studied a little bit of. The flow chart, the chart that has all the different departments and different things that's on it. It's very interesting things that I thought the governor was like our president in the state of South Carolina.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case.
No.
so-
And he don't. I mean, the senators really is where the power lies.
In the General Assembly.
Yeah.
So that's something we got to look at. I fully, I've spoken with both of them, and I believe both individuals. I'm not going to say which one I support at this point, because that's not what I'm here for.
That's right. We're here to get your message out.
My message, not theirs.
That's right. That's right. And
So
which we have a lot to cover too, buddy.
Yes.
We do, because I got a list here that I made just for you. You know, I know last time, man, gosh, what was it, 10 o'clock?
It was in the morning.
Yeah,
early.
9:45, and then you left at 7 that night.
It was a long day.
That was a great day
Yep.
for me. Honestly, by far, one of the most authentic episodes for me personally that I've done, and we're right at 27, 28 episodes thus far. So, you know, which I'm pretty proud of, honestly, because there was some people that was like, hey, you won't make it past 2 or 3 episodes, and now we're knocking on 30's door here in the next couple weeks, and then having the podcast studio being renovated and worked on, and so we're shooting for the middle of June to unveil that, and the equipment, all that's on the way in. The cameras, as you can see, we're testing out the new mic today, so. Yeah, man. But that was by far one of my favorites, because and I told a lot of people that it was just so authentic and real in the way that we connected, and just your background in the military, things like that. My background with DHS and Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, things like that. The fire service, police department. We were able to connect, and I was able to talk about things that I wasn't able to talk about with, just your random person.
Yeah.
And same with you. And so I felt that, and I was like, man, so that was great. That was really great. And there was a lot that wasn't on camera. That was some of the best conversations that I had. So, but this one right here, we made this strictly about District 98 and your campaign right here, buddy. And so I've got a list of stuff that I want to go over with you. And I know, like I said, we covered, what we just talked about, the 3623. And so I'm glad right now it has no traction.
None. It's dead.
It's dead. So that's good news,
Yep.
And so while we're on crime, and so let's talk about the recent crime rates and the spike in all that. And not to mention, with the crime rate spiking, school shootings, and we can attack one at a time. So we could do the recent crime rate spikes, and then we'll touch on school shootings and go from there. So with the recent crime rates spiking, like in all areas, what are some things that you, when elected, that you would implement to try to get a grip on our crime and lower it?
So from the state house level is a little bit of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right.
I would work, closely with our local law enforcement. So
Mm-hmm.
the sheriffs in Dorchester County, Somerville in my particular district, work with them. Also work with the solicitors or prosecutors in the area to find out exactly what crimes we're dealing with specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to figure out how to get the proper funding for the law enforcement. So we have to have a happy median. So our law enforcement has to be able to do their job without question. So if we get out there and we start putting legislation for accountability on law enforcement, that's going to make our law enforcement start thinking before they make a reaction. But we also need to have that legislation out there to hold law enforcement accountable so that we keep them inside of a lane.
That's right.
Okay, so we have to have a happy median. I can't have law enforcement going into combat. I spent some time in there, and if I start looking at an adversary and go, well, what are they actually doing? Am I going to get held liable for this? Or start thinking those processes. I need to have a reactionary, it's called intrinsic reaction. If I react to that situation, it could save my life.
Mm-hmm.
If I start going to explicit reaction, which is where I think about that reaction, it could cost me my life.
Yeah.
But we have to have legislation that allows law enforcement to do their job. We have to have legislation that holds the individuals accountable, because the judiciary system should be about a rehabilitation of the defendant. So if, or the accused, the perpetrator. So if we have an individual that we don't hold accountable, we're only as good as what we allow in a society.
Amen to that.
So if we allow petty crime, that is now going to be our social norm.
Yep.
Is petty crime.
That's it.
If we put a hard line in the sand saying petty crime is not acceptable here, and then we hold those people accountable that commit petty crime, maybe we can stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to figure out So you asked about legislation. We need to stop legislation such as the one we just spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
We need to hold people accountable.
We do.
Life is 100% about choices. Either you reap the benefits from your choices or you reap the consequences.
Exactly.
You make poor decisions, you have made the decision to throw away certain parts of your life.
Exactly.
If it means sitting in a jail cell, and that's what society is deemed necessary to as a corrective action through legislation, through judiciary, through research, you made that decision. I didn't.
That's right.
We're just enforcing that law, because the problem is you're one individual that made that crime, but it affects other people around. How do we make sure society maintains harmony if I don't hold that individual accountable and it affects 10 people? Because we already talked about statistics is going to show that it's going to ramp up into a violent crime, or
For sure.
multiple,
Yep.
or whatever.
Especially once they get that feeling of knowing, like we said earlier, of knowing that nothing's gonna happen.
Yep.
I go, I pay a little fine, I'm home. I'm not going to jail. I'm good. So that it's literally going to lead, because they're gonna get bold and they're gonna get bigger.
Yep.
And then it's going to be like, oh, well, how did this happen? How did this happen? How did we
Yep.
allow this to happen? It's like, well, people like Chris Murphy trying to pass, legislations like this. And it wasn't just Chris.
It was a whole group.
There
of
was a
them.
bunch of people
Yep.
on that name. But do you know the first name you see on there? Representative Murphy.
Absolutely, he's right there.
Yep.
So if we allow some of this to go, we're going to have a degradation within society, our societal norms, and we need to make sure we maintain that harmony. I want to have a prosperous life.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have a prosperous life.
Yes,
Your
sir.
kids want to, but we also need to look at the data points. We want to make sure we have we don't want to have a lopsided curve towards a certain socioeconomic status group,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever you want to put in that void. It could be demographic, it could be a sex, it could be a gender, it could be whatever you want to fill into that age group. We want to make sure I'm going to use the word equitable.
Yeah.
We want to make sure it's equitable. If it's a certain group, we need to figure out why. If we have a skewed high number in that, instead of just padding the numbers or overlooking the numbers, we need to figure out what the root cause is. And that's one of the things I'm seeing our legislators have a problem with, is what is the root cause? We're real good about putting a Band-Aid on something,
Yes, we are.
but we don't know what the real root cause is. Why do we have drug issues within the state of South Carolina? Why do we have major depression? Why do we have, whatever? We don't know what our root cause is, and that's where we need to be fixing things, is from the root, not from the top down. It needs to be from the bottom up.
Speaking of mental health, that's something that we used to take serious, and now we use it and politicize it.
Yep.
I've seen that, and I've paid attention to that, to where they'll take mental illness and they will literally weaponize it through the political world, and instead of fixing that person, they will literally feed into them, into their hysteria, their schizophrenic, whatever whatever their mental status is, they'll feed into it, and they'll keep them going. And that's why you have these people, most of them with a mental illness, and they're just feeding into it instead of helping them. It's just like, oh, hey, well, why you're like that? It's because these people right here. And then they develop hate because their brain is already asking for help. They can't process it, so they immediately turn to that person that they're being told that is causing these issues, and then they start attacking them, or they do worse, and they violently attack them. So that's something that needs to be addressed very seriously.
So mental health is mental health medicine is something that is fairly recent. Back in the 70s, 60s, if you had a person with mental health, you would take them to a home.
Yeah, that's right.
Or if you had someone with mental issues within the military, you would discharge them. If you had someone that was in firefighting or law enforcement that had some mental issues, you would discharge them from their duties. So CDL, aircraft pilot, if you have any mental disorders, they remove you from your job. So instead of it being looked at as so they always say if you're going to get mental health, you're looking to cure your problem. Well, that's what they'll say until you go start getting help, and then it's, oh well, you're sick. You have a mental problem. You can't think straight. So now it's weaponized against you or demonized.
Yeah.
So we got to look at the way we look at some of these ailments. If you have a mental disorder, PTSD actually leaves a mark on your brain, the way it operates on the brain itself, just like as if you had a concussion.
Yeah.
So there's some studies out there that we probably need to pay pretty close attention to and look at what's going on within the mental health world. People with mental health issues, they should feel free to go get help. 100%.
Yep.
Feel free to go get help. If you're having struggles, depression, go talk to a counselor. Go talk to somebody. We have a problem right now within, society, the nuclear family. If I want to talk to somebody, I can go talk to my mom or dad or my brother. A lot of folks don't have dad. A lot of them don't have mom.
That's a good point.
The nuclear family is no longer there. Used to be those that eat together stay together. We used to sit down at the dinner table and have a conversation.
Yep.
That's not society now. So we need to be thinking about where people are getting. We call them, so when I was in the military, we call them the dorm counselors. When I had a troop that was having problems, they would always go to the dorms and they would talk to their little buddies.
Yeah.
Their buddies don't know what's going on either. And they would come back and it would either exacerbate the problem or somehow help the problem. But I mean, it's just one of those things. We need to have, properly trained mental health providers, and we need to have them accessible.
Yeah.
Freely accessible, all the way through the medical. If I break my leg, medical insurance will fix that leg. If I have a mental ailment, it's not always guaranteed, so we need to look at, some of that stuff as well.
There you go.
I don't know. It's a very complex situation when you start talking mental health.
Oh, it
because
is.
It's the brain. The
It
most
is.
complex thing on earth is a human brain.
Yes, sir. Something
And
that cannot be replicated, figured out. Like it's astounding.
It's there. It's amazing.
It is. It
So-
is. So let's go on right here. To school shootings, and we unfortunately we've suffered some here in South Carolina. One just recently, but we've had quite a few. And then there was one last week, if I'm not mistaken, in Texas. And so, what are your thoughts on that? And I know a lot of people say gun control, gun control, gun control. But my thing with that is, Greg, a good person with a gun. It takes a good man with a gun to stop a bad man with a gun. That's how I feel. Literally. And someone like me as a collector, I don't go out that's just not it. I'm licensed to use mine as an enforcement officer, DH. I'm licensed to use it if need be in any scenario. But should everyone suffer because you have one person that goes in and does some heinous act, but they always attack our guns, gun rights. Let's take our guns. Take our guns. Let me tell you, a criminal doesn't need permission to go buy a gun. They don't need to go into Academy or Palmetto State. They don't need to go into any of these gun shops and go buy a gun. They're going to get them on the street. You know, they're going to go and steal them. So what are your thoughts on that right there, and with the recent school shootings that's happened, not just here but just in general?
So every one of the shooters that's gone into a public school and shot kids or teachers is a bunch of cowards.
Cowards. Damn right.
Period.
Yep.
They're cowards.
That's right.
If they want to go shoot up somebody, let them go shoot up a police station where there's guns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you want to be big and bad and known as a martyr or whatever you're attempting to do, go shoot up somewhere where there's an equal playing field.
Yeah. Military base. Go something to where it's laid out.
You want to be a badass? Go be a badass.
That's right.
Don't be a coward.
That's right. Because that's all that is. That is 100%. You know, that's why when they say, why you carry a gun, defend the defenseless. And that's it. You know, and that's just one of many reasons, but those people are defenseless.
If we go to, I was trying to scroll through my Facebook post right here. There was one thing that popped up, this morning, and it showed a young lady, and it says, they're talking about Roe versus Wade, Roe v. Wade. If you outlaw abortion will still happen illegally. And that was one picture. And then if you look at the bottom picture, it says, if you outlaw guns, we'll be 100% safe against gun crime. That's their mentality. So if you start thinking about it, and then there was another post that come in here and it says, we need to protect our children with the same amount of protection as any of our elected officials. We protect our president with guns. We protect our senators with guns.
Now,
our
I've
Congress
said
with
that.
guns.
I think that we should be, and this was my thing. I think that we should allow the same amount of protection, whether it be security, metal detectors. I mean, look at the billions of dollars these schools just got, and half of them did the right thing, and half of them didn't do nowhere near what they was supposed to do.
Yep.
So why isn't, we have school resource officers, so why isn't a metal detector in these doors when you walk in? Bam! I mean, it's, if you go into the State House, they're everywhere, right? You go to DC, you go to any of these places where all these heads of state, Congress, senators, the whole 9 yards, they're protected. Metal detectors, multiple checkpoints, armed regular guards, and then you have your tactical squadron, your special squadron that's gonna come in if stuff gets real deep. We can protect these people.
Yep.
And they're ruining our country. Half of them are. So why can't we protect our children? That's what confuses me.
So for me, we don't have a gun problem.
I don't think we do either.
We have a crime problem.
Amen.
100%.
100%.
So
there you go.
We talked about this in the last one. I bought a box of hammers and stuck it next to my fence because I needed a fence built.
Mm-hmm.
Not one of those hammers jumped up and nailed a nail in that thing by itself.
Exactly right.
Not one of these guns have pulled its trigger by itself and killed a kid.
Load the magazine,
So,
put it in.
Something has to happen.
That's
it's called a tool. Someone has to manipulate it to make it happen.
Yep.
The gun doesn't kill people. It's the evil individual that holding it that kills the person.
That's right.
It's the evil act. And if we go all the way back to nonviolent crime and we start letting people off with that stuff, it progresses to this.
It leads to it. Yes, I could see that.
What happened in any of these school shootings? They talked about Parkland, they talked about Sandy Hook, they talked about, I can't remember the name of the town, it's in Texas that just had the one. 19 kids got killed, 2 teachers. It was the last numbers I heard on the news.
Wow.
And it sounded like the young man come in through an unlocked door in the back and just went in with some pistols and some rifles and started killing kids. He had body armor on, 18-year-old kid.
And he just walked right in an elementary school.
That's what it sounds like from the news so far. And here's the part that irritates me. We'll go right back to accountability for cops. I don't want them beating up on people. We don't want another incident like we had that started some of the riots over the summer. You know, we don't want
I
we
get
don't
that.
want that.
I get that.
But here's the other side of the coin. These cops, it's now starting to come out that these cops heard what was going on and they assembled outside listening to this.
I heard that because I heard, if I'm not mistaken, if we're talking about the same thing, where they should have entered the room lot sooner. Yes. So some things could have been prevented, but again, we're in a climate, in a society where you're going to be judged no matter what you do. If you would have went in sooner, took the target out, which is what I would, take the target out, boom, bam, done. I don't care. But someone like that, in my world, they have no room for. And I'll say that. I don't care how anybody takes that. But someone that wants to go kill innocent people, you have no room in my world. And so go in there, take out your target, and do what you have to do to clear the scene. But instead, you let him get to his full peak of anger. He knows he's surrounded. Now his heart's pumping. He has to make a decision. He has to follow through with it.
He was in there, that young kid, he was 18 years old, was in there shooting kids while the cops stood outside, is what it sounds like right now.
That's what I heard yesterday.
So from the military standpoint, you don't want to rush into a situation right off the bat. You need to do it systematically or strategically. Well, how many shooters were there? What weapons did he have? What was going on? Where was he at in the school? Maybe he was in the cafeteria and there was no kids.
Yeah.
Maybe he went into the first grade class and shot them up first. Now he's in the cafeteria. Do we have a second to kind of regroup? So you got to get an idea of what's going on. So it's a very volatile, dynamic environment with what they walked into. We all would like to sit back and go, well, they didn't go in early enough. Well, did they? Do we know all of the facts at this point? We don't. They may have not gone in early enough. I would have. So the guy who showed up, he's the Border Patrol that brought the shotgun from his barber shop owner's chair, took that shotgun and walked past the cops and went in there and got his wife and kids and killed this guy. That's what it's sounding like. So a good guy with a gun stopped a bad guy with a gun. All right, so
and pass the law enforcement while he did.
Pass the law enforcement. That's what it's sounding like right now. We're in an environment of information overload.
We need more people like that who's not afraid to step up, because we all can make citizens arrests.
If his wife wasn't there, you think he would have done it? Or
Honestly,
his kids wasn't there, you think he would have done it?
No.
I don't know either. So
it's hard to say, because again, no wife, no children, take them out of the equation, and either he would have been one hell of a patriot.
So now
you never know.
We look at the mental health of this young man. Supposedly there was some mental health issues that he was being treated for, but he was never put into a category of a threat. So there's a whole lot of data that we need to sift through on this particular situation. Controlling guns, the last number, I think there was like 30 million guns or something like that in the United States right now being owned. 90% or better of those guns are probably owned by law-abiding citizens that is in society not causing a problem.
I would agree.
10% of them are either stolen and going through the crime, whatever the situation is, and we have criminals holding these guns. So we need to look at, some of those things. Flat out, that kid was 100% a coward for walking into a school and killing innocent kids.
Yep.
We protect our officials with guns, and we protect our kids, our future generation, with a sign that says this is a gun-free zone.
That's it.
What the hell is the sign gonna do?
Yeah.
Flat out. If I'm a criminal, I don't care about the law. You think I care about your little sign?
Exactly.
I don't care about your
right.
sign. So we're gonna look at some legislation. I don't care if I have to support it, draft it, write it, walk it around, show it, stencil it, print it, wallpaper it on my wall in my office in Columbia. we're going to get rid of gun-free zones. You know, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you have met the actual criteria,
I like that.
you will be able to carry a gun.
I like that.
If my kid's in that school and you are a law-abiding citizen that owns a gun and you don't protect my kid,
Yep.
we're also going to draft legislation to where if you want to put your little sign up and you disarm me, that is my right to be armed.
Then you're responsible.
You will be responsible, and I will
Responsible,
own
liable.
every single thing you ever thought about working for in life
And then
if something
some.
happens to me
That's right. That's right.
or some in my
or
family.
relative. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly right.
So we will figure that out. We don't have a gun problem. We have a law problem,
Yeah.
and we have a judicial problem.
Yeah.
Thanks to some of our legislators, federal and state, allowing some of this crap to happen.
What about judges?
And judges, oh my lord,
Yeah.
judges not holding people accountable.
I would say. So,
It's a big tangled web of intercorrelated garbage. You know, it's ridiculous the amount that you start trying to unravel it. It's like a ball of yarn that just keeps going and going and going and going. And no matter where you look, we have some issues, and we got to figure it out. We have to. We cannot allow this. We cannot allow. Also, don't want my kids going to school in a prison. You know, that's the other part. You know,
yeah.
that's not how society works. You know, we should feel safe enough with our kids. My kids' school, well, there's some schools going on that's in some of our districts to where they have to go from one building to another
Mm-hmm.
between classes. There's no gate around the school.
Mm.
So if I want to inflict some sort of damage,
Yeah.
I would just have to wait for a soft target opportunity, which is between bells,
There you go.
and I have an opportunity. So we need to think about exactly what we're doing here.
And if we can
Alright.
send billions and billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, but we can't protect our children, that's another thing that pisses me off. And you know, Grant, I don't mind helping other people. You know that, Greg. You know,
Yeah.
but one thing that I do have a problem with is how can we help other people if we're in need ourselves? Like, why can't we fix America to the best of our ability before we start? 40 billion was the recent number that was
Yep.
just passed. 40 flipping billion dollars, but we have mass shootings, you know, school shooting. We can't even protect our children. We can't even protect our teachers. These are our future leaders.
This
You
is
know,
our future.
It
The
is
most
our future.
valuable thing we have
And we
in
can't even
society
protect them.
is our kids.
But yet we have corrupt politicians that we will give them the top of the line protection, infrared, I mean the whole 9 yards, you know, drone, whatever they need, we'll give it to them. And then we can kick 40 billion more on top of what we already sent to another country after we want to, they want to disarm us, but yet we're arming civilians to fight. Does that make sense? I scratch my head on that one. I do, but I scratch my head. I'm like, okay, you want to disarm us, but yet you're sending them automatic weapons. You're sending them millions of rounds of ammunition.
Missiles.
But you want, yeah, javelins out the yin yang. Come on, you know, and you want to disarm us.
Yeah, it's
So
backwards.
what happens when we piss Ukraine off, and they turn around and take those same javelins and all the drones and all that, and they use that against us? That the Taliban did it.
Yep. So speaking of Ukraine, you know, we started looking at some of the budget that was put in there just before the end of the session or a couple weeks ago. They were talking about our missile stockpile being depleted because we're sending it all over to Ukraine.
Yeah.
But yet they're telling you as a citizen that we're buying those from other countries to send over. Okay, well, are we depleting them or are we buying them? Which one are we? So now our budget has to have money to replenish our stockpile for our military. So
And we got Russia
Are we-
constantly sending threats. China getting ready to bust off in Taiwan,
Yeah.
which I said that at the beginning of the year. Once this
Watch
stuff
it.
started going
Yep.
on, yeah, I remember me and Jerry was doing an episode, and he asked me, and he was like, "You think they'll invade?" And I said, "Look, what they're doing right now is they're watching to see how the world responds to Russia invading Ukraine. Then they're going to take that, and that is how they're going to try to countermeasure and hit Taiwan." And if you go, and this is what's very interesting too now, if you go to the federal government's website, they have erased a whole bunch of stuff about Taiwan. You know, on there it said that the United States did not recognize Taiwan as an independent nation. Now that is gone. It said that Taiwan was, I want to say something about a part of China. All that's gone. You know, the trading, there's a good little bit that has been erased off of the United States website, and it's just like, whoa, hold now.
That's our
How's
government
that?
right now.
Exactly right. That's them saying, okay, yeah, we're going to have to fund that war. We will intervene, all this and that. We're wiping that off. So now we do recognize them. And it's just like, I don't get it, but just, you know, it's something that we're in a pretty crappy situation. And
Same thing with vaccines.
yeah, there you go.
You know, vaccine is something that prevents a disease. Now
Yeah.
it's something that helps
helps.
with the disease.
And this was 99% sure, right?
Yeah.
Or 100% sure, whatever it was. It was a crazy thing, and you
It's-
needed
it's
one
wording.
mask, and you need two masks, and now they're just a precaution.
We're wordsmithing everything now.
That's all we're doing, and we're putting it on social media, and they're eating it like candy.
It's lawyers,
You know.
lawyer legislators
Oh, for
that
sure.
are doing this
Yep.
garbage.
You know, I haven't been on social media in over 3 weeks, and I'm going to tell you, did I miss it? Not really. Did I find more relief? Now, grant you, the work didn't stop. Just because I'm not on, you know, Facebook and this and that doesn't mean the work stops, because I just work behind the scenes. But still, you know, I could just see the debates and the arguments and the this and the that. And then I sat there and asked someone, because the school shootings came up, and they're like, "Man, we got to do something. We got to do this." And I said, "Look here, you always tell me, man, I don't see how you work. You got a wife and kids, but yet you go and you go out and you go to these meetings, or you go to these rallies and these dinners, these events and all this and that. You know, man, I don't see how you do it." And I said, right there, you just got out of your mouth that these school shootings, man, we got to do something about that. I said, so what you're doing is you're sitting here in your yard and you're talking about it.
Armchair quarterback.
I'm leaving your yard and I'm going and I'm doing something about it.
Mhm.
You know, whether I get with a bunch of people I don't know, which that's typically how it starts. That's how we met. We didn't know each other. We met each other and like, boom, now, you know, hey, we know each other. You know, we conversate here and there, you know, and the best part is when it's not political, you know, and so it's good stuff. But you have to get up. I tell people, if you're not in the fight, don't complain about it.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
don't complain about it. Sit at home, do what you do, live your life, leave your Facebook post alone. But if you're not out there going to these events, going to the rallies, actually studying who you vote for or who's in office, then don't do it. Don't do it. You know, people praise Malcolm X. Even Malcolm X said, you know, that if you voted Democrat, you voted for the wrong people. That was Malcolm X. You know, a lot of people, he's been praised in the Black American community.
Yep.
All right? He even said that about voting for Democrats. So, you know, it's a shame that you have one side that, yeah, and neither side is perfect. Neither side is perfect. But you do have one side that is more country and founding father based, and then you have another side that wants to just give everything away. And to hell with America, let's just make these people stronger and make our people suffer so we can control them more, because as long as we keep them fighting, guess what? Our job is done.
Division.
Yep.
So you spoke about Malcolm X.
Mhm.
So we just posted something from Dr. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
This revered as, you know, the great uniter.
Mm-hmm.
basically one of his quotes was, "We need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice, not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity."
There you go.
I mean, that right there
There you
says,
go.
he was 100% about justice,
He was.
equal justice,
Yep.
and humanity. Teach people, treat people with humility.
And you know why he was respected so much by all types of people? When he said something, he asked for it to be done in the name of the flag. He never said, do this because our ancestors. No, do this in the name of that flag. That's why. In the name, he believed in that American flag. He believed what it stood for, what it represented, the honor, the respect, the cost, to have that flag. He believed in all of that. That's why he was so, in my opinion, so respected by so many, because he did everything he did for that flag. He truly did.
We did a bunch of research on Letter from Birmingham Jail, and one of the things that kind of resonated with me was he asked for his activists to not get into violence because they'll lose the message.
Yeah.
There is a resounding effort of forcing violence to get a message across right now.
Oh, yeah.
And we're losing the message. No matter what your message is, we lose the message. And then our media being biased or entrenched into only negatives. There's a lot of positives going on in the country as well that we don't hear.
Not even a third of it.
It's a psychological, and I've mentioned this several times, we have a psychological operation of magnificent proportion that we've never seen in American history. And it goes all the way down to media, all the way down to, whatever we're looking at, newspaper, social media, mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked about it.
That's right.
How do we start, undermining people's beliefs as we start hitting them at the mental side? And how do we do that? We do that with jobs. We do that with social. We do that with, whatever. We start chipping away at that, base, and next thing you know, we have reliant individuals, which is unfortunate. So
that's it. Well, we talked about reform. So the judicial reform and how South Carolina appoints judges. So what are your thoughts about that?
So this is something that I strongly believe is we need to look at. Right now, the House, particularly the judiciary system, judiciary committee, selects the individuals to be looked at by the General Assembly and approved to go onto the bench. We're one of two states, South Carolina and Virginia are the only two states that allows a General Assembly to do that. All the other states allow the voters to appoint a judge within a circuit or magistrate or whichever system. Right now, the federal level, we have the president or a higher authority select the individuals and have them looked at by the General Assembly and then approved through the process. Right now we have some individuals, I believe it's 24, actually 26 judicial committee members, one of which is Chris Murphy. He's the chair of the judicial system or judicial committee, and they look at each individual candidate and they select, from what I understand, they select 3 candidates per position, and then they send it out to the General Assembly to be appointed. But they go through a process of vetting them. The governor has no say in it. The voters have no say in it. The legislative system has no say in it, other than the General Assembly taking a full vote. So what this brings to it, in my particular case, Chris Murphy has been on this committee for 12 years, and 2 of his immediate family members have come up and was appointed onto a bench. One being his wife in the First Circuit. She's a at-large judge for the First Circuit. family court system. That's happened since. I've looked at all of her fitness report or review report or whatever the official name is of it, and it appears that she is fit for the position.
Okay.
There is nothing illegal about it with her being in the position, Chris being the legislator at this point. His brother has also been appointed as a family court magistrate in the 2nd District, which is up in Berkeley County, if I believe. And that all come out of Chris's committee. I don't agree with immediate family members being put on the bench, because here's the problem. Chris is a lawyer legislator. If he's trying a case, there is a potential his defendant or his client can end up in front of that judge. So now we have a skewed or a biased opinion, potentially. I'm not going to accuse any of these people or even make the allegation that there's any of this going on, but the potential is there.
It always is.
It always is.
Yes, sir.
So you owe something to the person who got you there or the committee. Now we also have the issue with the individual that's running the chair or on the selection process now could be held in a situation to where they may owe one of the other voting members something. They're called vote trading, from what I understand. They'll trade a vote for, say, my wife to be put on the bench for something you want. Like
Let's see where a lot
criminal
of that
justice
happens.
reform,
Yeah.
where
See
we're
a
going to
lot of that
release
happens.
criminals.
That's right.
So we don't know if any of this is going on. It's not an allegation. Please
Pro quo.
don't think this is an allegation whatsoever. I'm thinking through it as an individual on the outside, looking at the loopholes that are available.
I was about to say,
And
yeah. You
it-
have to process it all. You have to go through it all.
It
Look at
seems like there is some possibilities of some of this happening.
Yeah.
So you asked about the reform. So the way that I would do it is I would look at some legislation, and there is some legislation that was put on as a reform to allow voters to decide if the governor can appoint or select judges and then run it through the process like we do the Supreme Court, have hearings and whatever, and find out if there's, they're fit for duty, whatever.
I think that would be a good idea.
It would be a good idea for our case while we
Yeah.
have a Republican governor.
Yeah.
What happens if we get a Democrat governor that moved in from California?
Well, I'm going to tell you,
Do we want?
there should definitely be something changed with that, because so I'm going to use my district, District 41. Our senator is Mike Fannin, and our representative is Annie McDaniel. You know who Annie? She's from Fairfield, but she lives down there in Yalston. So how she runs for District 41 is by using her mother's address or someone's address. I'm not sure, but anyway, does nothing to help our district whatsoever. She helps a select few people, and that is it. But far as wanting to help everyone, she doesn't. Well, the senator Mike Fannin got to appoint the new judges, right? And it was such an embarrassment, Greg. It was literally one of the most, in my mind, the most embarrassment moments that we've had in a long time, because here we have a newly elected senator beat out Creighton Coleman, and he appoints judges that wasn't even qualified for the job. And when they got up there, they couldn't even read off of the cue cards. Now, this is a judge that's going to make a decision to possibly take away your family's land, to send the kids here versus there, to send you to jail, to prosecute, whatever. And they couldn't even read the cue cards that day. And it was so sad, because it's just like, if you can't read that, how are you going to get through depositions? And I mean, how are you going to get through legislations? How are you going to read these laws if you can't even pronounce just simple words off your, how are you going to do that? And it was so embarrassing. I mean, I felt ashamed, and I mean, and I'm just a citizen there.
Yep.
I felt ashamed. And I'm just like, wow. And then they did nothing. There was some write-ups in the paper, this and that. But did you think those judges lost their positions? They did not.
They're on there for, I think it's 6 years
But
once they're appointed.
But it's just like, how do you do that though? Like, there should be a process, because if they can't read off a simple, thank you for, whatever, I appreciate this, I'm going to do. If they can't do that, then how are they going to read laws and interpret that? You know what I mean? That's how I thought about it. How are they going to be able to make sense of these laws if they can't even? Are they going to have to Google every other word? I mean, it blew my mind. So there definitely should be some kind of selection process, and maybe it doesn't need to be the governor. Maybe it needs to be a dual committee, where you have members of both sides, to where you can kind of even out, the argument, because you have to have balance.
Yep.
They said, good knows evil. That's the old saying, good knows evil, because the houses are adjacent,
Mhm.
right beside each other. Boom, good knows evil. So that's with anything. You have to have that balance. And maybe we do need a committee that could be put together based off of voting records per se. So and that's with anything going through legislation. Check their voting record to make sure that they are honest and true to what they say that they're due. Put them on the committee, boom, and every judge gets ran through that. And these are just ideas, random, things popping out. But
So one thing we need to look at in the state of South Carolina is lawyer legislators. So we need to make sure that immediate family members don't end up on the bench while you have the legislator in the House. So some of the legislation that I would look at and support wholeheartedly is keeping immediate family members of legislators from the bench for a period after that individual leaves office. So maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 4 years, because there's an inherent response from individuals that you had high influential power over that still remains after you leave office that could help catapult that individual onto the bench. So we need to look at some of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
And if you have a legislator that has a family member that's on the bench, one, they don't need to try a case in front of that individual. We need to have legislation that keeps that from happening.
Yep.
Two, they probably shouldn't be on the bench to start with, because there is pull from the legislative side as a representative to a judge. And if you're practicing law at the same time, defending people in the law system, and you're putting judges on the bench, that could be the same thing as a self-licking ice cream. I can get whatever calls I want out of that judge if I put enough pressure on them.
That's a good point.
If it's a family member or not. So
very good point.
we have to look at that stuff. So reform, we need to have a process that's outside of a committee. We need to have a larger pool of people looking at what's going on. If it comes from the governor, the lieutenant governor, the chief lawyer, AG, I believe is what they're called in the state of South Carolina.
Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson's ours. Yep.
Maybe he's the one that selects these people and says, here's the 20 names that I think should be filling these positions, and the General Assembly goes down through hearings. Maybe that's the way it goes. I'm still trying to get the full landscape of how all this works. Obviously, being on the outside, we don't get the full game plan, the rules at this point. But there's something that's been written quite a bit about. It's called nepotism, and we need to refrain from having that. South Carolina deserves more than this, or better than this.
I agree.
And my particular race is larger than just District 98. This is state of South Carolina, all the way through any of the districts or anything along those lines. District 98 race is bigger than just Summerville, South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
Everything that happens. Speaking with my opponent, he was talking the other day. We was in a debate, and 60% of the law comes through his committee in the state of South Carolina.
Yeah.
So if we can't get something as simple as a judge put on properly, what do you think's happening with the rest of our legislation?
That's a good point.
If you have 18 Republicans and 8 Democrats on a judicial committee, why do we have bills hung up and dying in judicial committee?
That baffles me to this day.
Please explain that to me. So something is going on, the dynamic, something is askew within that committee. So if we want something worthwhile, representatives such as Chris Murphy needs to be retired.
Yeah.
That's just the only way you can look at it. Something is askew on the judicial committee to where I've heard some different things through this last couple weeks. We was at a committee. We had a highly respected representative stand up at one of our meetings and said, you know, we don't want new people in office because we can't get anything done. They get trampled. But then they turned around and said, well, we can't get anything done as the old crew because we don't have enough seniority. But when we start looking at our representative, Chris Murphy, has missed 652 votes out of 1,300 votes in the last 2 years. He was not in his office. So
and you say he missed?
That's right on South Carolina State House.
Votes?
652.
52 votes.
So he's only represented us about 52% of the time. So he is considered our
and that
senior.
Was out of how many?
Like 1,300. You'll have to get the exact number.
Wow, yeah, and we will. But dude, to miss 652 votes, Mr. Murphy, you know, that's, gosh, and these are the people, District 98, y'all deserve better. Like, you really deserve better. And you're looking at them right here. And seriously, I mean, 652 votes, that's incredible.
So when we look at you know, our representative was standing there saying we need seniority. Well, when we have someone as influential as Chris, the judicial chair,
that's right,
the senior guy in Dorchester County, and he's not there, we don't get anything because the old heads, that like the ones that are there, don't have seniority. They can't fight for certain things to go to Charleston, or nothing happens. We're getting some word that potentially, while Chris was out as a chair, the judicial system or judiciary committee shut down because he wasn't there for a significant amount of time. So that's why we had a big push for legislation right here at the end of session. Save Our Women's Sports Act. That's why it was the last minute.
Yeah.
Election reform. Why it was the last minute. I mean, all of this stuff. I mean, this is no brainer. Why in the world do we have 2 years of sitting on constitutional carry? I mean, are you kidding me? That's a no brainer. The Constitution says I have a right to bear arms. Why do I have to have legislation that tells me that? And then once we have legislation, why do we have 2 years that it's sit in committees? I mean, are you kidding me? This is no-brainer stuff to me. But when you start looking at it, it's a part-time job, and most of the elected officials are doing it part-time on their part-time job, and they're dealing with other things.
And that's the thing, though, Greg. This is what gets me when you said that. All right, it is a part-time job, right? But whenever you sit down and you take that position on, you understand, or you should fully understand, what commitment goes into that.
Yes.
So you need to sit down and you need to put it on a scale. You need to weigh it out. This is my full time. This is how I pay the bills, yada, yada, yada. And then this is, I know the commitment that I have to put in. That's community. That's members, that's legislation, that's hours and hours. Sometimes you might even have to sleep in your office. Who knows? But you have to be willing to go to that extra mile to make a difference. Because if you're doing it just to do it, to say, hey, I'm a representative, well, what have you done? Yeah, I've done this and that. I could do more, but my attorney's office is this and that. So maybe an attorney shouldn't be a legislator.
So the AG has put in place that if you're a practicing attorney,
Mm-hmm.
a lawyer legislator,
Mm-hmm.
you do not have to show up in court between January and the first week of May. That's when our sessions are in the state of South Carolina. So any
So
lawyer
why
legislator,
then?
there is no reason for them not to be there. But here's the problem. If I'm a client of you as a lawyer and you're pulled off to go up to the state house, my case now gets pushed off.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm saying. But why would that even be allowed? That don't make no sense.
I don't get released from my job to go be a legislator.
That's what I'm saying. So like that should be taken out. That should be taken out.
That's some things we need to look at.
Yeah, Alan, we'll talk about that.
So here's the actual numbers. 540 excused absences, 112 not voting when he was present. That is a total of 652 times not voting, and that was as of May 5th, and according to the website, southcarolinastatehouse.gov, that was 1,222 votes taken in 2 years. At that point, he had a 47% voting record of representing District 98 in the state of South Carolina.
So the dude only voted 1,222 times in 2 years.
No. That's how many votes were taken, and he missed 652 of them.
652.
So we have
He
some
missed
issues.
more than half the votes.
That's as of May 5th. So there was a lot of votes that happened past that.
Yeah,
We
but
need to get the
still.
updated numbers, but I got stuck on the excused absences, and I didn't even get down to what he was voting on because I was just like, oh my Lord, what's going on here?
You ain't joking. I mean, that's over half. That's incredible.
Yep. So I'm not going to get into anything further than that. We have some issues in that department, and it needs to be known to people. If they know that their representatives are not representing them, they shouldn't be voting for them.
That's right.
They need to have someone that's actually going to be there. So regardless of what position they hold on any committee, I don't care if it was a guy that's up in Greenville and he's sitting on the Means and Ways Committee. If he ain't showing up 50% of the time on a part-time job already, we got a problem.
We got a big problem.
We have a problem. And when your committee runs 60+%, his words,
Yeah.
of the legislation that comes through the state of South Carolina, and you don't show up, we have a massive problem.
That's right.
We have a massive problem, especially for us that's conservative minded.
Yeah.
Because when that happens, and the words that we used in one of our posts was, we just allowed another vote for the Democratic side to trample on our civil rights and liberties, or take some of our freedoms away, or reduce accountability, or whatever.
By him not being
For him not standing there. If he's a true Republican, we know what our Republican values are. It means nothing if he's not there.
there. That's right.
So
And it almost shows you, well, it ain't no almost, it does show you, and it shows you guys in District 98 just how much he thinks and values the problems and issues, or even the prosperity that could be and will be once Greg is in office. But that shows you how much he literally thinks about y'all when he's
Yep.
missed over half the votes. I mean, seriously, guys, is that who you want representing you? So it's like District 98 has no representation.
that's half the votes in 2 years.
2 years.
Go to southcarolinastatehouse.gov, look up District 98, Christopher Murphy, and look at his voting record. Go right to the bottom of the page, click right next to a name, legislator, type in Murphy, and pull up his voting record. You're going to see he went from December 10th of 2021 until well into April before one vote was cast on his behalf.
Wow,
We're talking 4 months of a
Yeah.
session.
that's crazy.
So the numbers seem like, oh my Lord, but when you actually look at it, you're like, This dude wasn't there at all.
At all, yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And it says excuse
Well, it
absence,
seems like-
and you know, we talked to some different legislators, and it's eye-opening, regardless of the scenario. It is eye-opening of this amount of absence.
Yeah.
He found his way to file for re-election when he had excused absence the week prior and the week after.
Well, speaking, so we're gonna stay on this. I'm gonna shift gears to a little bit, but still, you know, Chris is gonna pop back up on this one. So we're gonna talk about the gas taxes here. So South Carolina gas tax, right? And how, so in your words, how do you feel, you know, the SC gas tax and how it has impacted the South Carolina citizens, our roads, and how do you feel about Chris Murphy wanting to allocate billions of dollars to our roads versus the funds that SC received from the infrastructure bill?
So that's a new thing. Chris actually voted for the increased gas tax. So we're into June right now, so we're at the max of 12 cents per gallon this month. This was the last, they voted it in 5 years ago, and it was 2 cents per year up to a total of 12. Actually 6 years ago, total of 12 cents. This month in June marks 12 cents per gallon that we're paying. That was off of a $2 billion number for infrastructure or road improvements. I looked up on South Carolina DOT not too long back, and it looks like they have about 70% paid for in completed projects at this point. We had the infrastructure bill, according to the whitehouse.gov, we got $4.6 billion given to the state of South Carolina for infrastructure. So if we raise $2 billion for $2 billion worth of projects off of 12-cent gas tax, and we have 70% of it done, the federal government gives us $4.6 billion to fix roads, bridges, infrastructure, things along those lines. Obviously, I believe it is over a 5-year period. There's several categories, so not all 4.6 billion is going to go to roads. But in my mind, if we did law to get 2 billion to fix our roads, the federal government just give us 4.6 billion. So let's say half of that comes to us. We've already finished 70% or 75%. So 1.5 billion dollars worth of projects. We're up to the max taxes for gallons per gas, and we got more money. There shouldn't be a road within the state of South Carolina that's not fixed. I mean, I can just look at the numbers and say, we wanted 2 billion, we raised it through gas tax. Now we got all this other money put in there, and we should have more money than what we have projects at this point. But here's one of the things that we need to really address. And when I left your podcast before, I talked to several other folks, and we added something called adequate public facilities is one of my key points. Charleston, South Carolina is one of the fastest growing places within South Carolina at this point. We have builders that's coming in, buying large swaths of land, building all these houses, doing whatever, getting the permits and leaving, but yet we don't have the road or infrastructure put in place. So we're taking the 12-cent gas tax and we're fixing things like, you go to Greenville has some phenomenal roads. You go around Columbia has some pretty decent roads until you get on 77. Some of the bridges are horrific. But you get down towards our area, Dorchester County, lower Dorchester, Colleton County, you get on Interstate 95 going to Florida, it will destroy your vehicles. Okay, so why do we not have some of that stuff fixed?
You know, the road thing, I could never, between the roads, the education, all this and that, the lottery funds, all this and that, there's a lot of stuff that's I don't see that we have put in place and implemented, but yet none of it's fixed. It's just like, what are we waiting on?
We don't we'll get right down to the root cause. We don't have a money problem. We
No,
have a
don't.
spending
Yeah,
problem.
That's exactly right.
We
That's
have a
exactly
spending
right.
problem.
Yeah.
So we have enough money off gas tax to fix our roads that we had on our chart. We
Mhm.
now have more money from the federal government. We need to figure out what's going on with that. Chris comes in and says on his website the other day, he wants to dedicate billions to fix our roads. Road work is very expensive work.
Very expensive.
Very
it used to be
expensive.
$1 million a mile for U.S. Group. You know,
Yep.
that was back early 2000s. You know, late 90s, early 2000s. That was again, that was paving.
Yep.
$1 million a mile.
So we have you know, a very expensive project. So going back to adequate public facilities, we need to have some of these developers take some of this cost on as well, instead of making all the money and bailing out, and me as a citizen have to deal with traffic or the infrastructure, the flooding, you know, whatever. We need to look at that side of the aspect. Shared cost. We have enough money at this point. Gas tax. Why did we not have legislators come out and say, we want to stop the gas tax now because we have enough money? We only needed $2 billion. We're almost up to that now, and the federal government just gave us more money, so let's stop gas tax.
Yeah.
I'm getting crushed by fuel right now. I run diesel.
Ooh. Yes, you are.
It's $5.39, $5.70 right there in Orangeburg.
That's insane.
Coming up here,
Did you
$5.69.
think that you would see that again? Those kind of prices?
It's going higher than that.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
already talked about it.
Oh, wait until next year. You know, like I've said this a couple months ago, the market, like I see a recession. I
Yep.
really do see a recession.
I see $9-10 diesel at some point.
Wow.
Okay, now here's my problem with that.
Wow.
They're pushing it right now to $6 for diesel. Every truck runs off diesel.
Mhm.
Every truck that's out there runs, every 18-wheeler
18, well, that's right.
runs
yeah,
off diesel.
Yeah. Shipping.
Every train runs off diesel to run a generator to run electric motors if you
Yeah.
start running some of those certain tracks. Every airplane runs off of JP8 or Jet A100, which
That
is
has
a diesel derivative.
component. Yeah.
All of this stuff, Maersk ships that you see out in the ocean runs off diesel.
Mhm.
So if you start looking at some of this stuff, all it's going to do is have a trickle down effect. Reading in the paper not too long back, something like 80% of the currency, I think was the number. It was an astronomical amount of dollars that has been printed in the last 2 years.
2 year 80%. I know I read that 80% of the America's currency, so the USD, 80% of the USD that is in circulation right now was just printed in the last 2 years.
So if we have more money
80%.
and resources, the prices is going to help solidify inflation. Well, my retirement and my pay has only gone up. I think we got a 2.8% pay increase for military retirement
Mhm.
because that's what inflation is. Well, inflation
Trump,
was
they
at
were
record
working
high.
on, what, 5%?
We've never received, I was in the military a little over 20 years, and I think we had one time that we were like 4%, 4.5%. We were like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. When you start looking at inflation, we're always behind inflation. So we got a 2.8%, I think is what we got this time, which we're fortunate. Please don't think I'm knocking it. I'm thankful we got that much. But on a retirement check, that's all I live on is retirement, and inflation is 8.5%, or there's some reports that it's upwards of 10% right now. I'm already down. So the people who got, some of the fallout money or some of these grants or some of this free handout money, they actually got a pay raise that was higher than mine that I did 20 years in service for. So we're having a little bit of a skew for
That's frustrating too.
I'm still paying the same prices, but here's the problem. Those people that are on Social Security, I feel sorry for those folks. You know, they're getting
for sure.
crushed.
They are.
You know,
Fixed income. Think about having to juggle your bills, you know, and figure out, well, do I sacrifice this? Do I sacrifice that? Like, because those are the decisions they're having to make right now.
We're into the time right now to where people are making a decision. I was listening to the radio on the way up here, and they were talking in a talk show. They were like, we have made the decision within my household to figure out schedules to when we can drive somewhere to get the most amount out of our drive time because of cost of fuel. Or we're going to stay at home and not do a vacation because of cost of fuel or cost of everything. So people are making decisions right now based on energy costs. And the number one thing that the United States has to have for national defense is energy independence. If someone other than the United States can cut down our energy grid, diesel fuel, gasoline, electric, wind, it doesn't matter what you look at, water, information, if they can cut that down, we now are at a deficit to them.
And we were
national
there.
defense.
And we were there.
Yes.
We were there.
So-
and we would have even been better if those policies would have stayed in place by now.
So we have a little bit of an issue there. So we have energy independence. We have to get back to energy independence. And all we're doing right now is we're solidifying the cost of everything. So if 80% of the currency got put in the system, you might not have got some of that money. But the cost of an item, a commodity, should have gone up double what it was to counteract how much currency was out there. It's just simple economics. So we have some issues that we need to address at the state level. I can't address all of them, but getting back to the gas tax, we have the money. We probably should be looking at removing the gas tax at this point because we have accomplished everything that we needed when that legislation was put in place. That's the short part of that answer that I should have started off with. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. We got a couple more things I want to cover with you. Obviously, there's a big, and we may have touched on this briefly, but now that, you know, June 14th is right around the corner, the school choice, ESA versus PACE bill. You know, I know we talked about that briefly. And so have you settled, like, have you actually come to a bill that you, when elected, that you would get behind and support, the ESA or PACE?
Out of those two bills, I would support PACE much more than I would support ESA.
I agree.
ESA affects 5,000 kids max.
Mm-hmm.
PACE could be up to 25,000 or 20, I believe, is what on their little chart that they were showing.
And the qualifications are
different.
Yes.
So we have a lot of legislation that's being pushed for the ESA right now.
Yeah. And that I don't get, especially when you see the comparison. I don't get it. I truly don't.
I had a conversation with, so here's the legislation. I think both of these, one of these is more a political charade than the other. Both of these are semi steps in the right direction, but they don't fix our problem.
Mm-hmm.
State of South Carolina is sitting at number 46 in the education system. We looked it up last time. US News, I think, had us at 44.
Yep.
Okay. We have kids that are not being prepared with analytical, logical, problem-solving skills that can read the English language, that can sign their name, and they can do simple mathematics.
Yeah.
They are not prepared to be successful
Even
adults.
Grammar,
anything.
The pronunciation, like everything, and it goes back to teachers are more worried about teaching children their own personal problems than they are just teaching them literature, reading, writing, arithmetics. Just
So
teach them.
We have 170 or 172,000 students in the K through 12 curriculum according to South Carolina Ed system. So if you start looking at that, we paid $13.5 billion into our education system last year. You mentioned it through the lottery system. The individual businesses within the districts are paying for the school system within there, because we had the Act 388, I believe is what it was, that took the education off of the house owners. So it has to be a commercial or not a residential property that you homestead in. So if you start looking at all of that stuff, we paid a lot of money. We don't have the return on investment. We have some of the highest administration cost in the Southeast right now. So our administrators are being paid the highest. We have no accountability because the superintendent of education is outside the legislative branch and is outside the governor's branch on the actual accountability side. And then we have kids that aren't being prepared. We have the state of South Carolina as the number 16 economic engine within the United States, within the economy. Okay, so when I start talking to some of the educators, and I have one stand there and tell me, thank God for Mississippi and thank God for Louisiana, so we wouldn't be number 50. But our legislators, the state of South Carolina deserves better than this.
They do.
The kids,
We've
already mentioned it. The most valuable asset we have in America is our kids.
Is our kids. That's
okay,
exactly
so
right.
If we're not preparing them for success as adults, and if our legislators will stand by and watch us, if we were sitting at number 48 for a year, I'd be asking questions. Why are we number 48?
Yeah.
How do we get to number 28? We've sat there for 20 years. So you're telling me that our legislators or our education system are just like, whatever, it's okay. We're going to fix that. Our kids that walks out of South Carolina public schools is going to prosper and be armed with knowledge to succeed as adults.
Awesome.
Period.
Yeah, that's how it needs to be.
When we start looking at these ESA and PACE, I had a conversation last night. ESA, 5,000 kids. That makes you feel good to say, I'm going to take them out of DD2 school system and put them in Berkeley 1. Well, guess what? It's still the same garbage system, right? We're just moving them to another school.
That's it.
You're still in number 48 or number 46, what we looked up.
Yeah, that's
so.
Not gonna change.
What exactly did you accomplish there? You moved your kid. Okay, so you asked about those two bills. PACE takes the government asset money and puts it into whatever. You can put it into a public school, a private school, a charter school. Is the standard going to be higher? Because that's what all we want is we want a higher standard of education for our kids. That's the underlying goal of every parent. We want the best for our kids. My kid goes to public schools. She is going to stay, both of my kids are going to stay in public schools. I am a product of public schools. I'm a product of public college. My doctoral degree is part of a private college. Charleston Southern is a private college, but everything else is a public school. I believe that there is some value there. We need to fix South Carolina public education to where we're not number 48, number 46, or what in the 40s. I have a problem with it. We can do better than this.
We can, and they deserve it. You know, they definitely deserve it. Like I said, that's our future. So, all right, I got two more things I want to talk to you about, Bud. And so, one of them is, three. So, I want to get your reaction first. I want to get your reaction on being invited to Mar-a-Lago. And I know that, when we first started the episode, we got a little quick update of just things that you've been doing and all this and that. But what was your reaction when you was invited and when you got the invitation to go to Mar-a-Lago?
That was one of the most humbling, interesting conversations I've ever had. So I had a phone call they called me at home. It was like 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And I was asked a question. Hey, if you had the chance to go to Mar-a-Lago, would you go? Well, I've never had a chance to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know. So I was like, I don't know. What, is it good for me? Is it bad for this? Is a person that's running for a different office.
Yeah.
That's been in politics for a while and knows a lot of people. And I said, is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Is it, who am I going to meet? Do I fit in? Am I in the right place? I'm just a candidate at this point at the state house, not at the federal level, because that's a federal, that's a big deal to go to that.
That's pretty awesome.
So I had a lot of questions, and I was more nervous about who I would meet or what I would say or my beliefs. I could go up there and be completely the outsider and just get crushed on the national stage if someone, like all the OAN reporters were there. They were Dan Ball, all of them. So if you start watching some of those news, I could have been the one on the picture going, the guy that shows up at Trump's house that doesn't believe the same as us. So I was nervous, very nervous to be exact. And we had the conversation for 20, 30 minutes. And the conversation ended, the phone call ended with, the invitation is there. You're on the list to get in.
That's awesome.
You tell me when you're going to be there. And I said, so when do I need to be there? What do I need to wear?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to do? What do I need to bring? And it was, you need to be here at this time. This is where you need to meet. Get your hotel, get down there. All the other stuff is already squared away for you. You're invited to Mar-a-Lago with a group, and then I was invited to a private dinner afterwards, get together with Mark Fincham and several of the Trump team members.
Mm-hmm.
We had a dinner, some drinks, whatever. It was very humbling, but what I walked away from when I went down there, I was very scared, because this is something you don't get to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I was standing from here to your refrigerator from Trump, talking openly to us, candidly about certain topics.
See, that in
with
itself had to be awesome.
At his pool with his little ducks swimming around in there. I'm just like, what is going on? This is mind blowing.
Yeah.
So it was very humbling. But when I walked away, I was like, okay, did I make the right impression? Apparently I did, because the people like Veterans for America First called me and said, hey, we want to do an endorsement with you. Can you do an interview with us? And we had a bunch of people reach out afterwards that either liked my presence or my message or my story, because a lot of people asked about my story. Why are you running? And I told one of them, I think it was like General Flynn's brother. He asked me why I was running. And I told him, I said, sir, I just retired from the military and I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And I don't have an expiration. I just retired. And when I'm looking at my kids and I'm watching their freedoms and liberties get whittled away on a daily basis, I can't stand off to the sidelines. I want to pass my legacy on to them.
That's exactly
and
right.
I have to be part of it. I can't be off to the sideline.
There you go.
When I talk to my grandkids, should I ever have any, and they sit on my knee and they say, Grandpa, tell me about, when you fought the war for Iraq to get their freedoms, why do we not have our freedoms? So I told him, I said, I can't do that. And he goes, that's a pretty powerful message. And I don't know if that resonated or reverberated through certain groups, but there's been a lot of reaching out to us.
Yeah.
That has been mind-blowing. I don't know where this campaign is going to take us. Should we not be successful on June 14th, I don't know where it's going to take us from there. If we are successful, I don't know where it's going to take us from there other than Columbia. Will it go to a further appointed or elected position at a later date? I don't know. Will it go to a different position within the government? I don't know. I'm going about the now. I'm working on now, the present, versus the future, and that's just where we're going at this point. So, Mar-a-Lago was fun. Walking through Mar-a-Lago into the gates and into it looked like a castle with stuff you'd see over in Europe with all the murals and all on the sidelines, the roof, sitting right on the water. It was very, very, it's a cherished moment through our campaign that I will always cherish. So.
That had to be an awesome experience, man. So, this is my final question I have for you, and for the crowd, every District 98, South Carolina, everyone that's watching. What makes you the best person to represent District 98?
So for that, we talked about Chris and his absence.
Mm-hmm.
I am retired. I have no per se job. I farm a little bit, but I have free will in my own schedule. I bring beliefs that are forged with multiple generations of military backgrounds. I'm third generation retired, semi-educated. I have the papers saying I'm educated, up to a doctoral degree. I'm working on a dissertation for that. So I bring a little bit of the education side. I understand that. I've lived life. I've traveled to 92 countries throughout the world. I've worked with people from all walks of life. I believe I have a semi-analytical mind that does not put up with the word no. I believe 100%. I believe 100% that we need to maintain what our constitutional founders, what our founders gave us in the Constitution. I believe we need to maintain that and preserve it for future generations. If we don't, we're going to be just like any of these other countries that are in trouble, and we're going to have nothing. So,
we definitely, and we're headed that way fast. We're heading that way fast. Now.
So, I believe I bring a well-rounded approach to everything. I'm used to working with larger groups of folks. I've sat on some of the top programs in the United States, one of them being a nuclear program for the President of the United States. I used to be on NLCC, National Leader Communication Council,
mm-hmm.
for the nuclear program through the military. Department of State through the INLA, the aviation, so I've seen that side of it, and I've been part of the special operations groups for about 13 years, working in operations throughout the world. So I bring a well-rounded background, and I'll tell you one thing, I am not doing this for a title. I've already had my life. I'm retired. I've had a military career that was phenomenal. You never top it. I've had an opportunity to do things that most people can't even dream of.
Yeah.
And flying on a C-17 around the world, being in China one day, Mongolia the next,
mm-hmm.
going down and spending, a month down in Africa, spending time in 14 different countries. I've got to pet a baby tiger in South Africa.
Oh, that's awesome.
We went on a safari, and then we was up above the North Pole. So I've had some things that I've had the opportunity to do that is beyond belief. We just went through Memorial Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time on C-17s bringing back people, our service men and women that had fallen on the battlefield, and giving them back to their families. That resonates with me more than anything I've ever done that was that was the most honorable thing that I could have ever done in my life, that has solidified my beliefs that those people did not die in vain for this country, defending that Constitution, to allow people like I'm running against to erode.
Yeah.
That probably is the shortest portion that I can tell you.
Yeah.
That I will not waver. I am not a politician. I won't be a politician. I don't know where this is going to take me.
That's right.
I've turned down PAC money. I won't be bought and paid for. That will not happen with me. If you see what you get right now.
That's right.
If I tell you I'm for guns, I'm for guns, and we're going to go fight for them.
And I can honestly say, since meeting you, everything we've discussed, whether it be on or off the record, you have literally stood true and firm to everything you've told me. So I can definitely vouch for that. If you say it, you mean it.
I have no reason to, there's no reason for me to lie about anything or deceive, or I've already got mine. I'm living just fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit off to the sideline and let your kids suffer, my kids suffer for weak spined people that are fighting for a title. That to me is BS. They need to be out there defending us. That is the reason for a government, is to defend our rights and freedoms, not to erode them. And I'm going to do that 100%. June 14th, we're going to have an answer.
Yes, sir.
Like I told Jason, our campaign guy,
Mm-hmm.
it's 100% we're going to have a result on the 14th.
Yes, sir.
It's 50% chance we're going to be successful, 50% chance we're going to be defeated. It is 100% chance we're going to have an answer.
That's right.
And we go from there.
And that's June
And we'll see where we go.
14th, guys. So it's just right around the corner. Mark your calendar. And matter of fact, voting, and I know it started in Fairfield, so most places,
All the state.
so you can go ahead and you can start voting now. You know, it's Greg Ford, District 98. So we got to get you in there, Greg.
We're trying. We're giving it all we have right now.
Yes, sir.
This has been a learning curve that was literally straight vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And we've given it everything we have at this point. You know, like I tell Jason, we've got our signs out, we got our message out, we got our podcast, our messages, you know, whichever. We have our baits out there. We just need to go catch the boats. Is all we need to do at this point.
Yes, sir.
So we'll see what happens. We're gaining some traction. The name is being passed around quite regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I was downtown at a restaurant, downtown Charleston, and someone pulled me out of the crowd and was like, "You're Greg Ford. You're the one that supports this whatever for veterans."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Yes, sir, I am." So that was downtown Charleston, away from anything that I'm even associated with. So
That's pretty awesome.
we have some things happening that's positive. Like you said, you're faith oriented.
Mm-hmm.
This is in God's hands.
That's right.
It's not in my hands. I'm just doing my part, and whatever the results is his track, not mine.
Yes, sir.
So we'll see where we go.
Is there anything you want to say to him before we end it? Your message to the people.
So it's very humbling. You'll hear me say that word several times. It's very humbling to be able to put my name on a ballot and go out and meet some of these people to fight for our constitutional rights and freedoms. This is not something I woke up thinking that I would be doing. This was a decision based off of several things that's happened with me personally or my family. And I'm here 100% for you, 100% for my family, 100% for your family. We're going to go fight this tyrannical stuff that we see going on, and we're going to preserve 100% our constitutional freedoms within every ounce of energy I have at the state level. We can't do anything about the federal level, but we will fight it at state level. We will put up those barriers to defend against federal bureaucracy, whatever we can do. But the first step is Chris Murphy. We have to get him out of office. District 98, that is our step. State of South Carolina, if you hear this and you're not in District 98, you need to spread your word. Spread the word. We have to get this guy out through your districts, down through whoever. Get the word out. It affects you just as much as it affects us in District 98. That's pretty much my story. I'm
Yes,
here.
sir. All right, guys. Well, Greg Ford, District 98, June 14th. Be sure, if you already haven't voted, like I say, if you're not in District 98, tell a friend, but you're looking at them, you're looking at what we need. This is change, and that's what it looks like right there. Greg Ford, he's already served, our country, so we can do the things that we do every day. And he's, like he said, he's retired, but he took an oath to defend the Constitution, both foreign and domestic. And so here it is, and it's up to us guys to put him there, but that's what we need. That's what changed. Like I say, that's what it looks like. June 14th, the primary. Get out there, vote. Tell a friend, tell everyone, spread it around, Spread it like bad news. Bad news gets around fast, so spread it like bad news if you have to. But yeah, June 14th, we can't stress it enough. Get out there, vote, vote, vote. District 98, Greg Ford. You heard it here first on South Carolina's fastest growing conservative podcast. I'm Brandon Peak, your host. And again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for all the support. The new studio, like I said, about the middle of June, we'll have it up to unveil. Like I say, from the cameras to everything, guys, you're going to love it. We put a lot of time and effort and thought into this for you, so we can continue bringing you episodes and interviews and things like that, and keeping you up to date. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and tune in for more.